morning, everyone. How is everyone doing today? I'm Mrs. Collins, and we are coming to you for University of California Desert Research and Extension Center. And we have a place on our property that is has a pretty extensive burrowing owl habitat. So about 70% of the burrowing owl population here in California lives right here in Imperial County. So we have a lot of burrowing owls. They are not what we call a protected species, but they are one of special concern, which means that agencies like IID will monitor their habitat and tell us a little bit about where the owls are located. Also have our speaker today is Jessica Humes. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself, but she does come from the IID, and most of the time we think of IID as our water and power sources, which they are, but those sources, well, there goes a tractor by, awesome. Those water and power comes from natural resources. And so they have a special department that manages natural resources and the environment, including burrowing owls. So Jessica, I'm going to give it to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Humes. I am the Environmental Project Manager at the Imperial Irrigation District. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll explain what I actually do. I am from the Imperial Valley. I went to Imperial High School, graduated there. Then I went on to the University of California, Santa Barbara. I studied geology, so rocks, earthquakes, volcanoes, anything out in the world is what I studied. And then after college, I came home and I started working at the IID. And my first program that I worked on was actually on burrowing owls. So my main job was to look for burrowing owls, mark their burrows, help our operators identify where they were, and protect them as much as possible. So the environmental project manager, and what we do at IID is we implement all of the mitigation tasks related to the water department, anything related to operation and maintenance, and then projects related to the quantification settlement agreement and the water transfer. In the past 2 years, IID has implemented 2 burrowing owl studies around the Imperial Valley. And what we've done is we've gone out during the breeding season and we've looked for burrows and any burrow that has a burrowing owl at it. And we count all of those owls along IID right-of-ways, so along canals and drains, and we identify them as a pair because it's breeding season, and then we do a population count. So at the end of each year, we get a number. In the past 2 years, we've had about 4,000 to 5,000 pairs of burrowing owls, and when you compare that to the rest of California, we are home to about 70% of them. So we're really fortunate that we have most of the burrowing owls in the Imperial Valley, and we are able to protect them as much as possible.
What she does is Jessica has a camera that has a long scope on it, and she's able to stick that scope down inside of the burrow, and that camera then projects a picture up to her laptop, and she's able then to count the eggs that are in there, count how many are in the clutch. The clutch is the amount of eggs that they have. And then she's also able to see if it's active or not. And if the burrow's active, then that's when she's going to get one of those pink flags and put on there.
And I'm going to show you guys all a burrowing owl burrow that the Farm Smart team constructed out here. So it's an artificial burrow. I'm going to show you what the inside looks like and how the burrow was constructed. And then we're going to look at the actual one. Right, so this is our little prop of burrowing owls right here. And this is the artificial burrow that Farm Smart has created. So this right here is a regular irrigation box. This irrigation box you might see at your house, usually around where your sprinkler system is set up. And on the inside of it, it looks like this. So when we construct an artificial burrow, we dig out a hole. We put a board down on the bottom, and then we put this irrigation box on top of it, and this acts as the burrowing owl's home and where they nest during breeding season. What we also like to do with these artificial burrows are we connect an irrigation pipe, one of these corrugated pipes right here. It goes in on the outside of the irrigation box. They're usually about 3 to 4 feet long, so you can see how long it is right here. And this acts as the entrance to the artificial burrow. The nice thing about this is that the burrows have a place to go and hide when they're out on top of the burrow, but then they also have a nice, warm, cozy home underneath the ground. So at the entrance of the burrow, actually outside, this is what it would look like. This is one of the active artificial burrows out here. You can see there's a brick right around there, and then there's the entrance, and that is the corrugated pipe that we're talking about. And usually on the outside of burrows or artificial burrows, you see a lot of little feathers. So here's some feathers. You see some owl pellets. I don't see any here right now, but we're going to actually dissect one in a few minutes. You see some of the things they eat. And this is how they really like to live. You know, there's a lot of food here, especially in the adjacent field. Burrowing owls eat a lot of different things. So some of the things they like to eat include crickets. They'll eat small rodents. They'll eat smaller birds, lizards, all kinds of different things. One of the other places you might see burrowing owls are out at, besides Farm Smart, out at the Sunny Bono National Wildlife Refuge. They have a lot of burrowing owls and artificial burrows out there. So not just, you know, along the agricultural drains and canals, but also in other areas where we try to protect their habitat, protect them as a species. So a little bit more about burrowing owls. Burrowing owls are not endangered, but they are protected. So burrowing owls are on the protected species list, which means in California that you have to protect their habitat. One of the ways IID does that, and we work with farmers and other entities to do that, is we mark out their active burrows before we go out and do any operation and maintenance activities. So the really cool thing about that is we have a team of 6 people who go out every day before we do any sort of maintenance, and they mark burrows along the canals and drains, and they use something like a burrowing owl flag. So this is one of our burrowing owl flags. It says owl burrow. It has a cute little owl on top of it. And what we like to do is we go out wherever we find that burrow. You can see some of these already have it, but we'll put in a new pin flag, as we like to call them, to mark and identify that burrow for our operators so they know not to disturb it. They go through an extensive training to learn what a burrow is, what burrowing owls are, what they like to eat, where they live, and then they get a certification basically that says they've been trained on burrowing owls. Some of the other things about burrowing owls include where their nests are. So they like to dig out nests, usually from either small squirrels, or they'll take over a snake burrow and they'll go dig that out and make it their happy little home. They also fill those burrows with grasses. They like to put little trinkets out. So sometimes they'll steal irrigators' gloves. They will bring pieces of aluminum foil to place out front of their burrow to discourage other species from coming in, especially snakes. They don't want snakes to come in there. They also, during breeding season, become very protective of their eggs. So most of the time you'll see the male burrowing owl sitting outside of the burrow. He'll sit up on top of a perch. So like this burrowing owl here, he is sitting on a perch, and he will be protecting the burrow while the female is inside. So most of the time, burrowing owls lay 1 to 2 clutches a season. If it's a relatively nice summer, they'll lay that second clutch. A clutch can be anywhere between 2 and 12 eggs. So most of the time we see clutches at about 4 to 5 baby burrowing owls, but it can be as much as 12 eggs. They are in the burrow
for anywhere from 28 to 30 days. And then the nesting period itself is 44 to 53. And then as soon as the babies hatch and are big enough to come out, you know, you'll start to see those little guys pop out of the burrow, hang out in front, and they will hang out there until they are big enough to fly. They start learning to fly. And then once they're able to fledge, which means they're starting to learn to fly away, you know, they can take off and do little flights into adjacent fields or around until they find a new home. We do get in the Imperial Valley some migration burrowing owls. So sometimes they'll make their way south to warmer weather. So they'll come from Canada, Washington, Oregon, and fly down here to where it's nice and warm. And during the nesting season, they'll come down, lay their eggs, have some babies, and then they fly back home, which is awesome for us. So I'm gonna actually dissect some of those owl pellets that we found. So when burrowing owls eat their food, they almost swallow it whole. They don't really have teeth. So when it goes down into their stomach, they have to work out everything that they can't digest. A lot of the times that's the bones, if there's any grass, really anything that's not useful to them body-wise. So then they basically cough up or vomit up an owl pellet, which is all of this excess things that they ate. So some of these, they're a little nice and dry, but you can see a lot of them look like dirt. There's a couple of little bones in here. I know it's going to be kind of hard to see, but we'll cut one more up. This one is full of grass. That's kind of cool. This you can do in your classrooms an owl pellet science project. We usually recommend you get it from a science like store. They have bigger owl pellets that have much cooler things in them. But you know, you would do this as a class, which is kind of cool. Here, these are some of the more down feathers on burrowing owls. So just to show you what those look like. So just a couple other things about what our program does. We work on a lot of other things, not just burrowing owls. We have a managed marsh complex up in the Calipatin Island area. We do a lot of surveys out in the desert for different lizard species. We also do a lot of surveys out at the Salton Sea. We look for birds, we look for desert pupfish. They are one of our endangered species out here. And then we try not only through this program with FarmSmart, but we try to get in the classroom as much as possible to talk about burrowing owls, talk about other species around in the Imperial Valley, and really work to educate everyone on the importance of our species and keeping them alive, because they are really important to us here. I can see Stacy's owl burrow back there.
Yeah, she's got a couple of owls, boys and girls. If you look right along the top of the ditch line, in the forward ditch line, forward side picture, you can see their little heads peeping up out of the ground. Someone's asking how long they live.
Great question. So burrowing owls typically can live anywhere from about 4 to 8 years. I think the oldest known burrowing owl in captivity is about 12 years old. We don't have any owls that are in captive here, but we kind of like to think of all of these burrowing owls along our canals and drains as our babies.
So a couple of questions we asked about, like what's their wingspan?
Oh, good question. So the burrowing owl wingspan is a little less than about a foot for each wing. So in total, they're maybe about 1.5 feet, 2 feet wide. Burrowing owls are total height about 12 to 15 inches tall, and they usually weigh like less than a pound. So they are really light birds, but they do have a pretty good wingspan. Their talons, so like their feet have really sharp claws on them, which is great for catching their prey, especially if they're going to go after squirrels or small birds. That helps them catch those. But yeah, they're pretty small little owls in comparison to like the great horned owl or the barn owl, which we see a lot of those here in the valley.
Now, someone else is asking about, I think it has to do with the migrating question. If they're migrating, they must have to be able to fly fairly high, but we don't really see them flying very high.
No, so most of the time, they fly in the valley pretty low to the ground. You don't see them, take off on big flights. They really are more like flying up to a perch or flying down to catch something, but they can fly pretty decent distances. I imagine if they were going to fly down from like Canada, let's say, it would take a couple of weeks for them to get here. They would have to make a lot of stops.
Now I have a question. We talk about migrating birds. Can you touch on the Pacific Flyway and why that's important here in the valley?
Yes, definitely. So the Pacific Flyway is a route basically from the top of North America, so Alaska, Canada area, all the way down through Washington, Oregon, and California, then down into Mexico on your way towards like Central and South America. So a lot of birds that migrate on the West Coast use this Pacific Flyway to migrate, especially during the winter season when it may be too cold in Canada or Alaska, even Washington, and they're headed towards warmer weather. So the reason it's called the Pacific Flyway is it's on the Pacific coast, but also there are a lot of lakes, rivers, streams that the birds utilize as they are migrating to help them feed and take a rest as they're on that migration. So we're one of the last stops that birds see as they're headed to their final destination because we have the Salton Sea. We have such a large agricultural area. There's a lot of water here. There's a lot of food, especially in terms of bugs. Other birds that are migrating, larger birds may try to eat those smaller birds. But this is one of those last stops along the Pacific Flyway. It's also really important because the Salton Sea is one of the last big lakes, especially in California. So it's really important for those bigger birds, especially fish-eating birds, to stop there and refuel before they make their last leg of the trip.
Someone wants to know that sometimes it seems like owls turn their head all the way around. Are they really doing that?
Almost. So most owls can turn their head almost 360 degrees. They do have to stop. But one of the cool things about owls is that they don't blink like normal people do or other animals. So their eyes are closed or open. And so part of that reason that they can turn their head almost all the way around is because they need to be able to see what's around them. They don't have very good peripheral vision, so they can't see off to the side. That's why they turn their head. But it looks like it looks like they can turn their head almost all the way around, which is pretty cool.
Someone wants to know if you've ever had a chance to hold one.
Only once. We did have a project a few years ago where we had to dig out a burrow because we were going to do some maintenance activities, and there were a couple of owls still stuck down in the burrow. So we got to pick those guys up and set them free. But most of the time, they're too fast for us to catch, and they're kind of skittish, so they don't really like to be held. But they are super cute, and I would love to have one as a pet.
They are very cute. Someone wants to know, how much does it weigh?
So they weigh less than a pound usually. Maybe a really fat burrowing owl may get, a couple of pounds, but really they're pretty small little guys, mostly feathers.
And just remind everyone again what they need actually in their habitat.
Okay, so burrowing owls need in their habitat, they need a lot of open space. They need somewhere to forage. So they like to forage, and forage means a place to go and eat or find food. So they like to live close to their foraging habitat. They usually eat invertebrates, so crickets, larger insects, maybe grasshoppers, cockroaches, those sort of insects. They'll eat small lizards, small birds, squirrels, anything you find around the edge of a field is really their perfect habitat. They don't like a lot of cover, so they don't like necessarily tall trees to be around them, just because they can't see what's around them. It's why they do that almost 360 degree head turn. They also don't want to get prey upon by larger birds. So, a large hawk may come in and try to eat them. So they want it to be nice and open. They usually stay pretty close to their burrow. They do line their burrows with grasses, feathers. On the outside of their burrow, they put a lot of trinkets. So they may put aluminum foil. We've seen gloves from like irrigators, corn. They really like to put corn out in front of their burrow. Those sort of things is really what they need for their habitat.
There, boys and girls, I know it's really hard to see them because they are wild animals, and they do, scare when we come close to them. But we've given you a good examples of where you can find them on your own, for you to go out and make some observations. And like I said, take some binoculars with you, walk along the ditch bank, and you'll be able to find them. Jessica, I'm going to check the chat the Q&A for a couple more questions. While I'm doing that, would you tell a little bit about KidWise to the teachers and boys and girls, and then also about your upcoming curriculum, video curriculum that you have for Burrowing Owls?
Okay, perfect. So IID, as part of our public education, we are working mostly with third graders because it fits in with the third grade curriculum, but we are trying to get into the classroom with a live magazine. And what we have come up with is a design and ad program. So we'll come into the classroom, which right now I know is virtual, but could be done online. And we'll talk to your class about advertisements. That's usually someone from Alive, but then also about the Burrowing Owl. We'll bring your class lots of art goodies, so crayons, pens, markers, those sort of things. And then we have your classroom design ads, and then we pick 4 winners that will ultimately end up in the Alive magazine. So I've been working with Stacy and Stephanie to get our flyer out about the design and ad program. And we're always looking for third grade teachers to help promote this program for us. Again, there's no cost to you as the teacher. We supply everything. We're just looking for third grade teachers to get out there. This one's specifically towards burrowing owls, but we also do a lot of other in the classroom. So if your class at any point in time wants to know more about other species in the Imperial Valley, about the Salton Sea, about agriculture, we do a lot of those in the classroom presentations as well.
Stephanie made a great point as far as when students go out to observe the owls. What tips do you have for students that do want to observe the owls?
So if you do want to go out, I would want you to make sure you wear closed-toed shoes. Sometimes things that look like owl burrows can be snake burrows, so don't stick your hand in a burrow. But if you do want to see an owl, make sure you take your binoculars with you. Keep away from their actual burrows, so about 6 feet away. Approach it slowly, and then usually if you just stand there, they'll hang out. One thing to be careful of is sometimes, especially during breeding season, they get really protective of their nest, so they will try to dive bomb your head, or if you have any dogs with you, they usually like to go after dogs. Just trying to get you to move away from their burrow. That usually means that there is a mom and babies inside. So you might just want to pass that burrow by and wait till that owl calms down and just look from afar. Awesome. But get out there. Definitely get out there.
I think that's great. The weather's turning nice, and we have those ditch banks are nice to walk along. And so I hope that boys and girls, you can get out there and look for some owls. This one that Stacy's had her camera on is staying there a long time, although we can't get up too close. But I would encourage you to get out there and look at some. Most of the questions in the Q&A were ones that you've already answered about what they eat, how long they live, and that type of thing. So I think we're kind of finished up with the Q&A, but Jessica, we thank you so much for joining us live today. And we're always interested in learning more about wildlife here in Imperial County. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for having me. And again, if you guys have any questions, we love to get in the classroom. So let us know.
Awesome.